Hello, Midnight Readers. Welcome to the Midnight Readers podcast. We are currently in the spooky season, and we're about to embark on our first full-length spooky season read, Once Upon a Fall. Here is the synopsis. A lifelong friendship takes an unexpected turn when what was supposed to be the ultimate fall road trip goes horribly wrong. Shelly, who has spent her entire life in sunny Southern California, jumps at the chance for an all-expenses-paid road trip to haunted Vermont. Ecstatic to be experiencing autumn firsthand, complete with a paranormal investigation, she has no idea what truly lies in store. Oblivious to the fact that a perplexing mystery, unfathomable horror, and unforeseen romance await her in that tranquil Vermont town, she is in store for a truly haunting experience. Alright, let's go guys, let's get right into this. In dedication to all the fall and spooky season lovers out there, may you have a hauntingly good read. Oh, we will. Oh, I love the way the inside of this book looks too. Check it out. For those of you watching on YouTube or Spotify, you can actually see all the little details as we go. You guys see that? Okay, here we go, guys. Once Upon a Fall, Chapter 1. I loved fall. I loved everything about it, from the changing colors of the leaves and the crispness in the air, to the pumpkin patches, hayrides, and scary movies. Being from Southern California, where it almost always feels like spring or summer, I didn't get to experience much of the seasonal changes growing up, and learned to love them from afar via books, movies, and social media. When Blake, my best friend, who also happened to be my neighbor, asked me to join him on an all-expenses-paid road trip to Vermont, a state that actually had notable seasons, I was ecstatic. The offer had been even more enticing upon learning that Ben, Blake's older brother, and his friend Nick had planned this trip not only to visit Nick's cousin, but to go on a paranormal investigation of Bennington Triangle, a place known for eerie occurrences. Upon researching it, I learned that Bennington Triangle was best known for a string of disappearances that occurred back in the 1940s. However, it is rumored that the eerie occurrences didn't stop then. In fact, recent reports indicated that the unexplained disappearances and mysterious sightings had not only picked up again over the last couple of years, but had spread to the very area that we were going to be staying. Blake and Ben knew that I wouldn't be able to resist the offer once they disclosed that there would be a paranormal investigation included in the deal. I couldn't help it. It was no secret that ever since I was young, mysteries had intrigued me. As for the cousin that we were going to visit, it sounded as though he had suffered much loss in recent years, from the unexpected passing of both of his parents in a horrific car accident to the drowning of one of his close friends. His poor dog had even gone missing recently. Nick explained that he had scheduled the visit with hopes of cheering up his cousin, as he had sounded as though he weren't doing well the last time they had spoken. Nick's ultimate goal was to get his cousin to come out to California for a while, if not indefinitely. He felt it wasn't healthy for him to be isolated up there on those 10 acres of land. Although, the way he described the place, it sounded amazing. I had only met Nick briefly in passing prior to now, yet Ben assured me that he was cool and this would be an amazing trip. Blake and I had done everything together for as long as I could remember. We had gone to all the same schools and had been in all the same classes. We even walked home together once old enough. Our likes and senses of humor have always been very similar, and surprisingly, even after all these years, we've yet to grow tired of one another. Blake is definitely my rock, and always has been. He always knows just what to say to cheer me up, and is the sole keeper of my deepest, darkest secrets. Ben, on the other hand, is 3 years older than us, and has always been like a protective big brother to me. Normally, I'd be a little apprehensive about going to stay at some stranger's house for 2 weeks, especially in an area known for unexplained occurrences. This is not to mention the nerve-wracking fact that the cell phone service out there tends to be spotty. However, knowing I'd have 2 of the most trusted men in my life there to protect me, I was willing to give it a go. I awoke early and got dolled up. Yes, I was going to be spending the majority of the day in the car. However, I had no doubt that we'd be taking tons of pictures at our mini stops throughout the day. As soon as I heard the knock on the door, I ran downstairs, bringing my bags with me. "Good morning, you ready for this?" Blake asked, giving me a big hug before grabbing my bags. Ben and Nick were waiting down at the car for us. Ben popped open the trunk as we approached. As Blake put my bags in, Ben gave me a good morning hug. Awkwardly, Nick followed suit. My breath caught as his hand trailed down my spine and lingered briefly at the top of my pants. What was that? That had to have been an accident, right? I barely knew this guy. Seeing the look on my face, Blake pulled me back as the guys climbed in the car. "Hey, what's up? Everything okay?" I paused for a moment and thought about telling him, but decided against it as I wasn't 100% sure that it hadn't been a total accident. I definitely didn't want to make things uncomfortable this early in the trip. Yep, all good, I replied, forcing a smile. We drove for what felt like forever, stopping every couple of hours to stretch and use the restroom. Hey, you guys feel like stopping for dinner? Ben eventually questioned. We were all hungry and in desperate need of a break from being on the road, so, with a resounding yes, we began to look for a nearby restaurant. A few short blocks away, we came across a cute little pizza place with an arcade attached. Relieved, we all climbed out and stretched before heading in to find a table. It appeared we had timed it just right, as a large crowd was leaving, and we now pretty much had the place to ourselves. Blake looked at me with a smirk before glancing back at the arcade. He didn't have to say anything. I knew him well enough to know a challenge was coming. Blake and I had been playing air hockey when the waitress finally made her way to our table. You feel like pink lemonade or iced tea today? Blake asked on our way back over. He was always a gentleman like that, ordering for me, holding doors open and such. Either sound good. You choose. He gave me a wink as we sat down with Ben and Nick. Immediately, the waitress fixated on Blake, taking his order first, even though he was the furthest from her. Her smiling and flirtatious batting of her eyes ceased as he proceeded to order for me as well. I guess, based on that, and his casually draping his arm across my shoulders, she assumed we were a couple. We actually got that a lot. People often mistook us as a couple, and I honestly couldn't blame them. We were pretty much as close as two people could get, without being in a full-on relationship. All that was missing was the bedroom stuff. I often had to laugh at the jealous looks that I'd get from other girls when they thought we were a couple, and Blake knowingly went along with it. I have to admit, I do have quite the handsome best friend, with his chiseled features, muscular physique, and perfect smile. My thought process was interrupted when he nudged me. Come on, those beginner's luck. I need a rematch, he said, nodding towards the air hockey. Beginner's luck? Right. That's why I beat you every time we play, I taunted. Okay, it's on, let's go, he challenged, grabbing my hand and leading me back towards the game. So what's the deal with them? Are they together? Hooking up, or? Nick questioned Ben. Yeah, right. She might be a pretty little thing, but she's like a sister to us. They're best friends. Oh, so they've never crossed that line? Not that I'm aware of. I'm sure he wouldn't have minded if she would have let him, but I don't think she's ever been interested in him like that. Why do you ask? Oh, no reason. Just curious. From the look on Blake's face, I knew he had heard them too. Hey, I'm gonna go to the bathroom really quick, he said with a strange look on his face. With that, he quickly walked away. A few minutes later, Blake still hadn't returned. It was then that Ben headed to the bathroom, and Nick began in my direction. Hey, how are your legs doing? Have you regained feeling yet? Nick attempted to joke, considering we'd been sitting in the car for the majority of the day. Yeah, I'm good, I replied. That's good. Tell me something about you, he said, taking a step closer. What do you mean? What do you want to know? I hear you don't have a boyfriend. Is that true? Yeah, that's correct. Why do you ask? Oh, no reason. Just trying to figure out why not. Something must be up. I'm sorry? I don't follow. Are you insinuating something? Nothing. Never mind, he said, taking yet another step closer. He was now standing uncomfortably close. I jumped as the arm slid across my shoulders and remained lazily draped there. What's going on? Blake questioned, looking down at me before setting his gaze on Nick. Oh, nothing. Just keeping her company for you. The guys over at the bar had hungry looks in their eyes, and not for the food, if you know what I mean, he replied, acting as though he had done us some sort of favor. Gotcha. Well, thanks, man. I'll take it from here. Sounds good. We watched silently as Nick walked back to the table. I glanced at Blake's arms still around me, then up to his face. Oh, sorry, he said, pulling his arm off of me. Since when do you say sorry for that? I teased. Hey, look, pizza's here, he said, nodding towards the waitress, dropping it off. As we made our way back to the table, I couldn't help but think how strange that whole interaction had been. Something definitely felt off, and not just with Nick, who was sort of starting to give me the creeps, but with Blake too. We all took turns driving and sleeping for the remainder of the drive there. It felt like Blake and I had just closed our eyes to get some sleep when I awoke with a jolt as the car turned onto a bumpy dirt road. As I fully awoke, I realized my head was on Blake's chest, and he had his arms wrapped around me. I always loved how being in his arms made me feel both comfortable and safe. Reluctantly, I pulled myself up and gazed out the window. Shelly? Yeah? Blake's sleepy voice was adorable. Don't leave my side, he said, and then paused. What? Why not? I questioned, starting to feel a wave of worry creep over me. Because they say it's haunted out here, he said in the spookiest voice he could muster before cracking up. I whacked him. Haha, very funny, I replied, rolling my eyes. You two are dorks, Ben laughed. Close to 10 minutes later, we finally pulled up in front of a large house that oozed rustic charm. It looked like something straight out of a magazine. Chapter 3. As we walked up the steps to the wraparound porch, I was caught completely off guard. Instead of the disheveled, depressed-looking guy that I'd been expecting to see, based on Nick's description, out walked an equally magazine-worthy man. The way he ran his hand through his hair and gave a half-smile would have been enough to make my breath catch on its own. However, that, coupled with his button-down shirt that hung open just enough to reveal picture-perfect abs, and the way his jeans fit just right, stopped me dead in my tracks. Guys, this is my cousin, Noah. He proceeded to shake everyone's hands and exchange formalities. However, when he came to me, he shook my hand with a firm grasp, holding on just slightly longer than what would typically constitute a normal handshake. He had a twinkle in his eye, and I couldn't help but smile. He quickly let go and one of the guys cleared their throats. Once inside, Noah inquired as to how the drive up was. The guys all chimed in, telling bits and pieces of what we had seen and done. Would anyone like something to drink before I show you to your rooms? Noah offered. Everyone accepted his offer. Here, why don't I help you? I said with a smile. Yeah, why don't you two help me grab the bags while they're doing that? Ben said in such a way that made it quite apparent he wasn't actually asking. I could see the hesitation on Blake's face, before Ben put his hand on his back, guiding him outside. Your home is stunning. You must love it here, I remarked, following Noah to the kitchen. Thanks, yeah, it definitely has its perks, but it can get lonely at times. What about your friends, or girlfriend? Don't they keep you company? He cocked his head to the side. Crap. Had it been too obvious that I was fishing to see if he had a girlfriend? No, not lately. Okay, what about a boyfriend? I teased. No, not one of those either. Although, that's not really my style. He laughed. Do you like living all the way out here, away from all the hustle of city life? It's where I grew up, but it wasn't my plan to stay. I'd been getting ready to move to the city, at least for a while anyway, when my parents got into the accident. Oh, I'm sorry, I said, now feeling a bit awkward. Avoiding eye contact, he handed me two of the drinks to carry. It was clear that it was a hard subject for him to talk about. I followed him back out to the living room, handing Blake a glass as he sat down on the couch. I gasped when Blake unexpectedly pulled me backwards by the belt hoop of my pants, landing me right next to him. I narrowed my eyes at him as he chuckled. He was clearly amusing himself. I felt my cheeks heat up upon realizing everyone was staring at me. I was thankful when Noah began to speak, drawing their attention back away. So, looks like there's supposed to be a storm heading in a couple of days. We should probably make a list and swing by the store today to stock up. That way you guys can enjoy your ghost hunt tomorrow without worrying about having to do that too. Yeah, okay. Ben and I can run to the store while everyone freshens up and showers. I wanted to show Ben around a little bit anyway, Nick said, looking to Ben, who nodded in agreement. After the list was made, the guys got ready to head out. Just as the door closed behind them, the phone began to ring. Noah excused himself to take the call in the other room. Once we were alone, Blake cocked his head to the side. What's up with that look? Oh, what look? I questioned, completely unaware I had been making one. I don't know. You just don't have your usual smile. He replied, nudging me. Oh, that's probably due to this unnatural level of exhaustion. Seriously, how are you not tired? I don't think I could even smile, even if I wanted to right now. With that, he raised a brow. Blake, don't! And that was all it took. He was on a mission. He began messing around in an attempt to get me to smile. Within minutes, he had me laughing so hard that I had tears in my eyes. Okay, we better quit messing around. I know the guys are going to want showers when they get back. How about you go first? While I check my work emails really quick, I suggested, once I finally caught my breath. You're right. Be back in a few. Don't miss me too much, he said, hopping up, ruffling my hair on his way out. Just then, Noah re-entered. So, what's the deal with you two? With me and Blake? He's my best friend. He has been for as long as I can remember. So he's not your boyfriend then? Nope, not my boyfriend. Just as the words left my mouth, a thud came from the hallway at the top of the stairs, and I couldn't help but wonder if Blake had been listening. If he had, there was no doubt he was going to tease me about this later. He always liked to give me a hard time whenever he thought guys were flirting with me. Hey, how do you feel about Queen Anne's lace? Little Joe and Silvercup? And Noah asked, seemingly out of nowhere. I furrowed my brow questioningly. Who? He laughed. Not who. What? There's some of the flowers that thrive out here in the fall. Oh, well, I'm sure I'd love them. I'm a gardening enthusiast. Aside from working on my own little garden back home, I thoroughly enjoy wandering the immaculate public gardens around town. Then I have something I think you're going to enjoy. Will you take a walk with me? Sure, I said, intrigued by what he was going to show me. I followed him out the back door, across the deck, and out onto a little trail that led into a lush wooded area. As we came to the clearing, I couldn't believe my eyes. Beautiful wildflowers blanketed the ground, while other flowers grew in designated pots and planters. A little sparkling stream cascaded down the rocks, and small lights were draped across the trees. It felt like a magical little land, the type that you would expect fairies to reside in. "Oh, I love it!" I exclaimed. "I thought you might. My mom and I designed it before she passed." "What a beautiful memory to have of her," I said, gazing up into his puppy dog eyes. He smiled before kneeling down. "Here, a pretty silver cup for a pretty girl," he said, handing me a little flower. I can't help but blush. We continued to walk and talk for a few more minutes before mounds of dirt off in the distance caught my eye. "My parents," he said, catching me off guard. "Excuse me?" "That's where my parents are buried," he clarified with a tear glimmering in his eye. A lump began to grow in my throat as I realized that his parents only accounted for 2 of the 4 mounds of dirt. "I'm sorry about your parents. I know how hard it is. I lost both of mine over the last couple of years as well." "So, is that like a family burial area or something?" I questioned, curious about the other graves. "No," he replied bluntly, turning and beginning to head back to the trail that led to the house. There was a heavy awkwardness as we walked back in silence. I couldn't get what had just transpired out of my head. Who were in those other 2 graves, and why didn't Noah seem to want to tell me? Chapter 4. Once back in the house, I noticed Blake still hadn't come back downstairs. I was a bit disappointed by this, as I would have felt a bit more at ease if he had been around. Unable to shake the uneasy feeling that had enveloped me on the walk, I thanked Noah for showing me around and informed him that I was going to head upstairs and take a shower before the guys got back. "I should be the one thanking you. I don't get many visitors these days, especially not ones whose company I enjoy, so thanks. Anyway, towels are in the cabin and the bathroom. Holler if you need anything." I smiled and nodded before making my way to Blake's room. The door was cracked open. I could see him lying on his back staring at the ceiling. That wasn't like him. So I gave a little knock and entered as I headed in his direction. "So where did you disappear off to?" "Oh, Noah was showing me around the garden. It was beautiful, magical even, but I stumbled upon something kind of He cut me off mid-sentence. "That was nice of him. He's a good-looking guy, huh?" "Well, yeah, anyone with 2 eyes could see that. Why? You interested?" I teased. "No, I'm tired. I'm going to try and get some rest before everyone gets back," he replied, nodding towards the door. "What? Blake, what's going on?" "Nothing. I told you, I'm just tired." Leaning down, I hugged him tightly. "I don't know what's up, but hopefully after you rest, you'll be ready to tell me what's wrong." "Sure," he replied, his voice void of emotion. With that, he rolled over and closed his eyes. Confused and concerned, I lingered for another moment before heading to my own room. Something was definitely up, but what? Blake was never like that with me, even when upset and wanting the world to leave him alone, which was rare, might I add. I was always the exception. He never tried to send me away. It was always quite the opposite, in fact. On a normal day, he typically would have pulled me down next to him and held me there until he drifted off to sleep, not tell me to leave. Had something happened that I had missed? Had I done something to upset him? I stayed in the shower longer than usual, praying that the warmth would help to melt some of the stress away. However, it was to no avail, as I couldn't get Blake out of my head. Making my way back to my room, I touched up my hair and makeup. Before long, I was pleasantly distracted by a delicious aroma that filled the air. Noah had to be cooking something. Just then, I realized that he must have started on dinner. He was already generous enough to let us all stay here. He shouldn't have to cook for everyone, too. So, I made my way back downstairs. "Hey," he said with a smile as I entered the kitchen. "Need some help?" "Well, I don't need it, but I'd enjoy the company," he said, tossing me an apron. I was thankful that the conversation seemed to flow effortlessly this time. He was actually a pretty intelligent guy and had a good sense of humor. At dinner, everyone raved about how good the food was. He attributed me with all the credit, although he had been the one who had done the majority of the work. "So, do you guys have everything ready for your little ghost hunt tomorrow?" Noah inquired. "For the most part, and it's not a little ghost hunt. It's a paranormal investigation," Nick corrected. "You sure you guys want to do this investigation?" "Yeah, why wouldn't we?" "Well, rumors tend to be laced in some sort of truth, and everyone knows weird things happen out there." "Well, that's sort of the point. We're hoping to capture some of the weird stuff on camera. Speaking of weird, tell everyone the story of what happened to Nancy. Who's Nancy? Ben questioned. His hot ex-girlfriend, Nick chimed in. No, she was a friend's stepsister. She was only supposed to be in town for the summer. I took her out on one date because my buddy asked me to. We didn't hit it off, so that was the end of things, Noah explained. Yeah, until she went missing and they found... Nick started to say when Noah cut him off. I'm not doing this. I can't believe that you, of all people, would bring this up. With that, Noah got up in a huff, continuing out onto the porch. Everyone aside from Nick exchanged wide-eyed expressions. Aren't you going to follow him? I questioned, feeling a little bad about how upset Noah appeared to be. Nah, he's a big boy. He can get over it himself. I waited a minute. When Noah didn't return, and nobody else volunteered to do anything, I silently stood and headed outside after him. I found him on the porch stairs. Hey, are you okay? I asked, sitting down next to him. Aren't you scared to be around me? Everyone else is. No, should I be? Nick didn't finish telling you the rest of the story? I shook my head. She'd been missing for a week before they found her body on the edge of my property. She'd been raped and, according to the autopsy report, appeared to have choked to death on a piece of jewelry that had been lodged in her windpipe. There were a whole array of unanswered questions surrounding her death. Like I said, I had only gone on one short date with her, and hadn't even seen her for a month following, so I had no answers. However, that didn't stop everyone from assuming the worst about what had happened. And about me. I can't blame them. The evidence looked bad, seeing as how she was found on my property and all. Their attempt to pin it on me proved meritless, as they were unable to come up with any solid evidence tying me to what had happened. I could see the tears glimmering in his eyes, and hear the sincerity in his voice. Well, for what it's worth, I believe you, I said reassuringly. I thought about giving him a hug. He definitely looked like he could use one right about now, but froze when I heard footsteps coming up behind us. It was Blake. Hey, I'd feel more comfortable if you moved this back inside, he said with a stoic expression. The tone of his voice dripped with authority, and I knew he meant business. And Nick must have told him the rest of the story after I'd left. I couldn't help but wonder how his version had gone. Without questioning, I nodded and stood. I'll be in there in a minute, Noah responded. Blake wrapped his arm around me as he guided me back in. What was that all about? I questioned. Sorry, but I prefer my best friend alive. Thanks, so do I. But Noah doesn't strike me as a bad guy. Well, except... I started to say, but trailed off thinking about the 4 graves I had stumbled upon earlier. Blake stopped dead in his tracks, turning me by the shoulders to look at him. Except what, Shelly? Well, I was just going to say that the graves on the property struck me as a bit odd. Graves? Yes, just outside of the garden. That's what I was trying to tell you earlier when you rudely kicked me out. So Sleeping Beauty could get his beauty sleep. I snarked. Well, I mean, it's not uncommon for people with properties this large to have family cemeteries and whatnot. Sure, and that's what I thought, at first, when he said that 2 of the graves were his parents. However, when I asked if it was a family cemetery, he said that it wasn't, and began walking away before I could inquire further. Wait, so you're saying you never found out who else was buried out there? No, it got really awkward after that. I hurried in to find you, only to be sent away. I had to throw that out there one more time, just to ensure that he knew that I wasn't thrilled about the way he had acted. Look, I'm sorry, okay? I shouldn't have reacted that way. Wait, reacted? What exactly were you reacting to? I questioned just as Noah walked up. Feel like helping me grab out the pie? Oh, sure. I replied, not really wanting to say yes, but also not wanting to be rude. I glanced back at Blake, who was now staring with a look of disbelief plastered across his face. I mouthed, sorry, as I began to follow Noah to the kitchen, knowing very well that I'd most likely be hearing about this later. Here's the pie and the whipped cream. I'm going to let you take it out to everyone, if that's okay. I'm going to head up to bed. I don't really feel like dealing with anything else tonight. What? Are you sure? I questioned in shock. Yeah, don't worry about it. I'll see you tomorrow before you guys head out for the investigation. With that, he headed to his room, and I was left taking the pie out to the guys on my own. I have to admit, I impressed myself with my balancing skills as I attempted to carry everything out in one trip. When I entered, Nick was obnoxiously laughing while Ben and Blake sported uncomfortable looks. Blake looked thankful for the excuse to stop listening as he quickly hopped up to take the plates and forks from me. As I set the pie down, Nick turned to me with a smirk. Oh good, no more drama king for the night, huh? I know I probably should have bit my tongue, but he was being a real jerk. Nick, I know it's not my place, and I don't know the dynamic between you two, but Noah seemed legitimately upset. You're right. You don't know, he said, throwing a look in my direction that sent chills down my spine. Blake's stare intensified as he protectively draped his arm around my shoulders while dishing us up some pie. Where's mine? Nick questioned. What, hands don't work? I muttered under my breath. Here, I'll grab us some, Ben said, hopping up in an attempt to defuse the situation. Blake and I sat in the living room while Nick and Ben remained in the dining area. I thought you said he was cool, I questioned. I thought he was. I've never seen this side of him, and considering Ben was willing to vouch for him, I figured I didn't have any reason to question his character. I honestly don't know what his deal is tonight. I nodded. I didn't know what Nick's deal was either, but one thing I did know for sure was that the Nick that we were seeing tonight definitely did not strike me as someone who had come to visit his cousin in an attempt to cheer him up. Shortly after finishing up our pie, we decided to head up to bed. We both wanted to be well rested for the investigation. It was nearly impossible to sleep throughout the night, as footsteps constantly passing outside my door kept me awake. I was close to the end of the hallway, so I couldn't figure out why there was so much activity going on outside my door, especially at this late hour. It was already nearing 2 a.m. Finally, the noise subsided, and I was able to get some rest. I woke startled as the floorboards creaked yet again. I glanced at the clock. It was now 3 a.m. I heard the footsteps approach, as they had before. However, rather than continuing past, this time they stopped. I was really beginning to regret not taking Blake up on his offer to stay with him in his room tonight. I pulled the covers up, closed my eyes tightly, and focused all my attention on listening to what was happening outside my door. I planned on being ready to hop out of bed if need be. Next up, Chapter 5. Tune in next time for the continued reading of Once Upon a Fall.